taxes, bigger paychecks, and more jobs for American truckers and for American workers. We will bring back our jobs. We will bring back our wealth. And for every citizen across this land, we will bring back our great American dreams.
All right, highlights of last night's big speech. It is Wednesday, October 12th. President Trump rallying the crowd in Pennsylvania, taking his tax plan to the American people, how he plans to put money back in your wallet.
Plus, we just got a big update on the border wall from the president himself, what it could look like and how soon it could be coming.
And girls allowed in the Boy Scouts? The bombshell announcement that's sending shockwaves across America. Fox and Friends First continues right now.
Good morning. You are watching Fox and Friends First on this Thursday morning. I'm Jillian Neely. And Rob, I don't know if you know, I call it Friday Eve. It makes me feel closer to the weekend.
Thursday is one of the best days of the week. It's Friday's tomorrow. That's right. And it's a rainy Thursday, and it's going to start feeling like fall around here on the East Coast. I'm Rob Schmidt. Thanks for starting your day with us. And our top story right now, President Trump set to take a major step to reform health care later today after yesterday taking his tax plan on the road.
Griff Jenkins joins us live from Washington, D.C. with more. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Jillian. Rob, he sure loves truckers, doesn't he? Called them America's heroes, and he's about to infuriate Democrats with an executive order on health care he's going to sign. But first, that tax plan that the president says is going to put a lot more money in the pockets of working families. He says it's fair to the middle class because it simplifies an outdated and burdensome tax code, reducing an existing 8 brackets, if you include the 0 bracket, down to 4. Here's what he said last night.
Under our framework, we make the 0 bracket bigger and get rid of the 10% bracket, and we're reducing the 15% rate down to 12%.
All right, it's early, but take a look. Here are the brackets. They would be 0%, 12%, 25%, and 35. 0, 12, 25, and 35. The key is the expansion of that 0 bracket because it would include a lot of people who would normally fall into the 2 higher brackets. The plan doubles the standard deduction for individuals and families and cuts the corporate rate from 35% to 20%. That's a key of it. The president called for bipartisan support. But look, guys, the real goal here is getting all the Republicans on board. And Speaker Paul Ryan is going to make a speech in a few hours at the Heritage Foundation. And in it, he's going to say the moment is here. And like any opportunity of a lifetime, it has to be seized. We have to choose to turn this page. We have to choose to do this. Predictably, though, Democrats panned it. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi calling it a big tax break for the 1%. That doesn't surprise us. But, you know, back to that health care order. Now, that's going to be a health care executive order because that's going to allow Americans to buy, if it goes through and doesn't get the resistance it's expected to get from Democrats, it would allow Americans to buy health care insurance across state lines, and it would skinny down a lot of the plans that are currently in existence. And we're going to hear a lot about that later today.
At this point, I don't expect anything to just go through without a fight.
No. No.
Well, it's an executive order.
Certainly.
So that's how he thinks he gets around.
That one he can slide in with the stroke of a pen. So, all right, Griff, thank you so much.
President Trump working hard to sell his tax plan to the public.
That's right. Opinion editor for the Washington Times, Charles Hurt, says Republicans better find a way to make this happen after failing on health care, or the president will have no problem reaching across the aisle yet again.
The problem we're going to see, much like we saw with healthcare, is going to be between Republicans, more conservative Republicans and more moderate Republicans. But the Republican leadership has to understand that they are facing a situation where, yet again, where if they don't figure out a way to come together and come up with something and work with Donald Trump on this, Donald Trump will walk across the aisle and try to negotiate something with Democrats. And obviously that makes it a lot trickier for a lot of reasons in terms of leadership and getting Congress to do stuff, but Donald Trump is not an ideologue on this stuff, and I think that Republicans make a huge error in not doing everything they can to bring people together and get something done.
Now to the Harvey Weinstein scandal. TMZ reporting Harvey boarded a private jet overnight and headed to a sex rehab and behavior center in Arizona. Now, as you know, he was originally supposed to head out of the country, but for some reason that plan changed. This latest development coming hours after TMZ also reported Weinstein's daughter called 911, claiming her dad was, quote, suicidal and depressed. And now the Justice Department ordering the FBI to investigate the laundry list of sexual assault allegations. That's according to the Daily Mail. As for Hillary Clinton, it's been 6 days, and she has finally said she will give Weinstein's campaign donation back. Well, sort of.
Would you give the money back?
Well, there's no one to give it back to. What other people are saying, what my former colleagues are saying, is they're going to donate it to charity. And of course I will do that. I give 10% of my income to charity every year. This will be part of that. There's no doubt about it.
Weinstein and his family have given more than $1.4 million in political contributions to the Democratic Party. And while late-night comedians have no problem poking fun at President Trump, they've been silent over this scandal. Author Mark Stein is calling out the left for the hypocrisy.
I think it's actually worse than that, because if you notice the things that the left gets annoyed, if Mitt Romney, who is nobody's idea of a sex fiend, and he happens to say that as encouraging women to apply for a job, he phrases it rather clumsily, and he says binders full of women. All these late-night talk show hosts, everyone, he's a punchline for 2 weeks afterwards. Dear old decent Mitt, because he's a stiff who stands up when a woman enters the room and holds the door for her as she leaves. Meanwhile, they're completely heartless about the huge mountain of human debris piled up by this Hollywood pig over the last 3 decades.
All right, other news now. Authorities now going door to door in California neighborhoods, a number of which are burned out, telling people to get out of other neighborhoods as wildfires burn thousands of homes there. This situation is very dire. At least 23 people have been killed so far. Another 300 have been reported missing.
I don't know. Again, it's awful. I don't know. It's the worst nightmare.
It is a real scene there just north and east of the California Bay Area and in wine country. The cause of all of these fires still unknown at this time, and the weather doesn't seem to be improving at all here in the next couple of days. We'll talk about that coming up. All right, 10 students turning themselves in to police after an 18-year-old dies during a hazing party for a fraternity. Police say Louisiana State student Maxwell Groover had a blood alcohol content of nearly 6 times the legal limit to drive after being forced to chug hard liquor. Police say he was left in that fraternity house alone where he died. That chapter of the fraternity has now been shut down.
Well, a lot of people are pretty outraged this morning at the news that came down yesterday about the fact that the Boy Scouts of America are now going to let girls into some of their programs, including the Cub Scouts, and also higher up so the girls can get that Eagle Scout.
It is certainly a very interesting development if you have any kids that are into Scouts. I mean, obviously, we've always had Boy Scouts and we've had Girl Scouts, and I love Girl Scout cookies, and I know a lot of kids that were in the Boy Scouts, and they were 2 different things, and that's just the way it was. And what's interesting is we still don't really have a genuine reason for why this was done, but here's a statement from the Girl Scouts that might somewhat explain why this is happening. We're disappointed that the BSA, Boy Scouts of America, didn't discuss this with us to say we're having trouble with our membership. This is a direct response to boost their declining membership. So that's how the Girl Scouts are taking it.
You know, and the Girl Scouts say that, look, you know, this is something we've done for a long time, that the Boy Scouts have received a lot of requests from families and girls to be able to join, but the Girl Scouts are like, well, hold on a second. We've had this expertise in the Girl Scouts and our own thing
That's
for
why we're here.
A century. So why are we changing this? And I got to tell you, Rob, I was never a Girl Scout, but I was in the Campfire Girls. It was our local version of the Girl Scouts.
Okay.
I loved it. As a female, I really, really loved it. And I know a lot of people feel that way as well.
Yeah. And here's Laura Ingraham talking about this last night.
I mean, it's the tyranny of political correctness. It's another reason why Trump won. I think people are tired of this. Boys should be able to have a boys club. Girls should be able to have a girls club. And if they want to have a club where boys and girls are doing activities together, that's fine too. But this is just more madness. And I think most parents are tired of it. Most people are tired of it. And it's a very small, radical group of gender benders out there in the culture who want to say there's no difference between boys and girls. They're all the same.
Yeah, I agree, especially as a young female. Like, it gives you an opportunity to develop and grow and create friendships.
But we still don't know why they've done this.
Right.
If the Girl Scouts are right and it's just about money, then it's really not a PC thing at all. So we have to wait and see why it is. But it is a bit strange at this point. All right, 10 minutes after the hour coming up, one college just banned Christians from the freshman fair. Wait until you hear why.
We need a tax system that is fair to working families and that encourages companies to stay in America.
So is President Trump's tax reform pitch going to be a payday for middle-class Americans? Up next, Professor Brian Bremberg breaks it all down for us. Don't go anywhere.
All right, President Trump taking his tax plan to the people, promising massive cuts for the average American. So how can and will it happen?
And joining us now is the chair of the program in business and finance at the King's College in New York City, Brian Bremberg. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Good to see you.
So your take on the speech yesterday and the tax cuts?
Look, the president is selling the tax cut the way he has to be selling it, which is when the economy grows because we cut taxes, that's going to help workers throughout the economy. I love that he's taking it to truckers here because the pitch is obvious. When companies are producing, when people are trading, buying and selling, you need people to deliver those goods. That's what truckers do. That's why they see their wages go up. That's how he has to sell this tax plan. You see money flowing through the economy and getting to middle-class Americans doing middle-class jobs like driving trucks.
Yeah, let's bring up some of the highlights here on the screen. Here's some of the plan here. It reduces the number of tax brackets from 7 to 3. It's going to simplify the tax code. That's a big part of it. Cuts the corporate tax rate dramatically from 35, I think, down to 20%. The standard deduction, 12% for one person, $24,000 for a family, $12,000 I should say, and eliminates the estate tax, which a lot of people say only helps the wealthy. Also expands the child tax credit. Just some more things here. I mean, dropping the business tax, it's going to drop the top tax bracket for earners by 5%. It's also going to take that estate tax away. Is this a tax cut for the wealthy? Because that's what all the Democrats are screaming right now.
Notice what he's doing here.
Yeah.
Yesterday he was selling the middle class tax cut, but he was also really selling the business tax cut. And that's what he has to do, because there are a lot of people who say, look, if you cut taxes for businesses, that's really going to go to the wealthy. And what the president is trying to say is, no, that's not true. When you cut taxes for businesses, they reinvest. That's how they hire workers. That's how you see wages go back up. So he's trying to make the case that a business tax cut is actually a middle class tax cut. If he can do that, he drastically improves the chances of this thing getting through.
He even brought Robert Kraft, owner of the Patriots, into the speech yesterday, saying Robert Kraft told him, you don't make this about us, you give the tax cut to the middle class. But I guess my question is, sometimes things look too good to be true, right? Can this be the only way this happens, or do we need to see cuts elsewhere?
Well, tax reform by itself is not going to save our economy. Let's be clear about that. And the president has never said that. He's been talking about regulation. That's really important. Continue to cut regulation. Tax reform is important. Healthcare is still really important. I know we've had a lot of failures on that, and that's been a big problem. Something still needs to happen there. But the combination of these three things is what gets people back to work, gets wages up. Tax reform is a critical part of that, but it can't be the only part of that.
And he needs a win or bad, so he needs this to go through. Let me ask you something. For this to be deficit neutral, to not add to our national debt, which is now $20 trillion, for a lot of fiscal conservatives, they're not going to vote for something that's going to add to that. How much GDP does he need to get this thing to actually work and to satisfy the very fiscal conservatives?
The projections right now are over the next 10 years, you're going to see the economy grow at about 2% without a tax cut. If they can get to 3%, you're going to see this tax cut pay for a lot of itself. Maybe not all of it, but pretty close. That would be a big boost. Look, there are a lot of people who think getting to 3% is going to be a tough lift. The president thinks it's possible. Gary Cohn thinks it's possible. If they're right, then this tax cut could be really, really helpful in terms of paying for itself and getting wages into people's pockets.
I guess the things that affect us all, the fact that it'll be on one sheet of paper, as he made sure to point out yesterday. And I thought it was hilarious that he kept hounding on the fact that we won't have any more potholes. potholes, which I'm in favor of. Because
there's a little side benefit.
That affects everybody.
Especially in the Northeast, where our bridges and roads are just evaporating before our eyes. Brian, thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you for joining us. I'm too far away, but thank you.
All right, the time now is, well, I don't know, because we don't have a clock. Oh, there it is. 17 minutes after the hour, and President Trump pushing tax reform, but it's not his only focus.
We right now have built 5 prototypes. They just are going up, and some of them are already finished, and I will say they're really looking good.
A big update on the wall coming up next.
All right, President Trump announcing his pick for a new Secretary of Homeland Security. 45-year-old Kristen Nielsen has been nominated to replace General John Kelly, who's now the president's chief of staff. She previously served on former President George W. Bush's Homeland Security Council. Her nomination will need to be confirmed by the Senate, so we wait for that. President Trump's most famous campaign promise, one step closer to reality. The president giving an optimistic update to our own Sean Hannity last night as border wall prototypes are going up in San Diego.
We right now have built 5 prototypes. They just are going up, and some of them are already finished, and I will say they're really looking good. They're really looking good, and our country needs it. We need it not only for people, but we need it for the drugs that are pouring into our country. I mean, we have drugs that are pouring into our country.
So once all of these models are finished, a winning prototype will be picked by the Trump administration. Jillian.
Thank you, Rob. Achal Katzen, he is joining us now. And listen, we were just talking about this. Good morning. And this is a little dark.
It's a little heavy. A lot of people are going to be going to this and seeing Winnie the Pooh. Who knew?
Right.
You know, but I had a chance to catch up with some of the stars of this movie, Goodbye, Christopher Robin, who told me all about the inspiration behind the famous stories. Love this movie.
Thank you.
There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
This couple who, wrote the perfect children's book had this imperfect relationship with their children.
Which was very typical of parents of that age, to be fair.
Very heavy themes, but done with such a light touch and done respectfully, but never heavy-handed, never felt preachy.
And then there's this whole theme of celebrity. You were like, your character was like One Direction and Harry Potter all wrapped up into one.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to play this role?
It was quite hard actually, because Christopher Robin, he's a very sad boy. There's rarely a smile on his face, and that smile only comes out when his father is playing with him in the woods.
Will Tilton is such an incredible 8-year-old.
Yes.
We're talking about the celebrity of Christopher Robin. And the real Christopher Robin, he said he gave up his childhood so millions of kids around the world could have theirs. And I was just like, wow, you're 8?
Right, seriously, is this going to be one of those things that kind of like ruins the childhood fantasy of Winnie the Pooh for all of us?
Not at all,
okay.
Not at all. That'll add to it.
You liked it?
Appreciate Winnie the Pooh all that much more now.
What would you give it?
4 stars.
Okay, 4 stars, okay.
And not just because it's a Fox Searchlight movie.
Because it's Winnie the Pooh.
Exactly.
Come on, can't go wrong. All right, Michael, thanks so much for joining us. Coming up, President Trump blasting NBC after the news outlet releases a bombshell report that turned out to be fake.
That was just fake news by NBC. It's frankly disgusting the way the press is able to write whatever they want to write.
The media now in a frenzy over his new solution to combat fake news networks. So we debate it next. Good morning. Welcome back. President Trump set to take a major step in fulfilling another campaign promise today after making his tax plan pitch to the American people.
Yeah, Griff Jenkins joins us live from Washington with more on that. Hey, Griff.
Hey, good morning, guys. That's right. You know, the president is going to really upset Democrats later this morning when he signs a health care order. But first, that tax plan is getting a lot of play, and it is going to put, according to him, more money in the pockets of working families in the middle class. But first, we have to do something, he says, about the tax code.
America is finally back on the right track. But our country and our economy cannot take off like they should unless we transform America's outdated, complex, and extremely burdensome tax code.
So here's what he wants to do. He wants to reduce the existing 7 brackets, or 8 as he calls it, if you include the 0 bracket, down to a simple 4. They would be 0%, 12%, 25%, and 35%. The key here is the expansion of that 0% bracket that he says would be bigger to include many who would have traditionally fallen into higher brackets. The plan also doubles the standard deduction for individuals and families and cuts the corporate rate from 35% to 20%. The president called for bipartisan support, but the real goal here is to get all Republicans on board. Speaker Paul Ryan is making a major speech this morning where he'll say the moment is here, and like any opportunity of a lifetime, it has to be seized. We have to choose to turn this page. We have to choose to do this. Democrats are painting the speech. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi called it nothing more than a massive tax cut for the wealthy 1%, and she's not going to like that health care order, executive order that I said he's going to sign, because it's going to allow Americans to buy health insurance across state lines. Guys?
All right, Griff Jenkins, live from Washington. Thanks, Griff. Have a good day. Before President Trump's primetime tax reform speech, he first laid out the details in an exclusive interview with our Sean Hannity. His biggest selling point, the impact on the middle class.
We have a zero bracket because a lot of people pay zero. So we really have 4, and they had 8. So it's really 8 down to 4. We're cutting it in half. And a lot are taxed below the $12,000 mark and $24,000 mark for family. They're taxed at 0. After that, it goes to 12% from 15%. And, you know, the Democrats told a very terrible fib. They said that they read the brackets so that the brackets were inverted. And if you read it that way, but that's not the way it goes. And we've been praised for the amount of money, the middle class. This is really what I'm looking for the middle class. I call it the working people. And the working people are going to get a massive tax break. And corporations and companies and small companies are going to get large-scale tax relief. And they'll be able to compete with anybody in the world, which is what we need.
President Trump's corporate tax cut from 35% to 20% would make American firms more competitive. Rob?
All right, Jillian, thanks. President Trump taking on the so-called fake news media as well after NBC releases a bombshell report that claimed he wanted a 10-fold increase in the United States nuclear arsenal.
So you want to increase the nuclear arsenal?
No, I never discussed increasing it. I want it in perfect shape. That was just fake news by NBC, which gives a lot of fake news lately. And it's frankly disgusting the way the press is able to write whatever they want to write. And people should look into it.
All right, so was this fake news, and should more action be taken against what the president calls fake news? Here to debate that, hosts on the Blaze TV, Lawrence Jones, and liberal analyst Kathy Aru. Thank you guys so much for coming on this morning. Kathy, we'll start with you. Okay. The president calls this fake news. He does have a history of calling things, stories that he maybe doesn't like as fake news, and maybe blurring that line between a biased media and a fake media. What are your thoughts on his comments yesterday?
Right, exactly. I mean, he's trying to do away with NBC News. He wants to revoke their license, which Nixon spoke this way. So Nixon, who was a disgraced president in American history, was speaking the same way because he didn't like what the media had to say about him. And then Watergate came out, and we all know how that ended. So, I mean, we need a free press in our country. We're not China. We're not North Korea. We're not Cuba. We are a democracy, and we need a free press.
Right. And let's go ahead and let's pull up those tweets here real quick. Let's read what the president tweeted about this. Fake at NBC News made up a story that I wanted a 10-fold increase in our U.S. nuclear arsenal. Pure fiction made up to demean. NBC equals CNN. And of course, we know what he thinks of CNN. With all the fake news coming out of NBC and the networks, at what point is it appropriate to challenge their license? Bad for country. That tweet got a real firestorm. And network news has become so partisan, distorted, and fake that licenses must be challenged and, if appropriate, revoked. Not fair to the public. Now, Lawrence, I think it's fairly easy to make a case that a lot of the mainstream media has a bias, and a bias toward the left. I think I think a lot of people would agree with that. Making the fake news case is a lot harder, especially when, after he made those tweets, NBC doubled down on their story, saying that these sources for this story really do exist. What do you have to say?
Well, I think there's no doubt that there's a lot of the media being dishonest, and they have a political leanings to the left. But as the general said, this is not true. General Mattis condemned this report. He said it wasn't true. But I would push back on the president because me being a libertarian, I don't feel like we should be regulating the press because that's part of the First Amendment. And unlike Democrats, I want to be consistent on this issue, especially when you had Obama administration and the DOJ that targeted people like Fox News and James Rosen. So I want to be consistent with the president. I don't think he should go after the press from a legal standpoint because it's just against the First Amendment. But I do think the president has a valid point when he says some of the media is being dishonest. And when you look at polls, a lot of American people agree with him.
Yeah, I mean, and let's say it as it is. The press certainly has its flaws and has had stories that have come out to be untrue. Kathy, over to you for a second. Is it fair to say that the media is biased but not fake? Or would you, where would you draw the line in this argument?
As a journalist who covered the White House and the White House core, I wouldn't say we're biased. I wouldn't say the media is biased. We reported the facts. We did what we were supposed to do. We are every man. We go in there. We ask the tough questions. The White House responds. So I wouldn't say they're biased.
But don't you think that there's a tougher scrutiny, Kathy? It appears to most people that there is much more scrutiny on certain members, in politics than others. And I feel like some people do get a bit of a glazing pass. I mean, they bring up the story, but they don't hammer it the way they do on, people like President Trump.
It may look that way, but remember the Clinton days. Yeah. Everyone had a field day with Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. So It's been going back for a while. Back to Nixon.
But that was so salacious. I mean, Monica Lewinsky was, you could not talk about that.
What Trump says sometimes is so crazy. Yeah. So, you just can't help the press for reporting it and having a good time with it.
Lawrence, take the last word. Go ahead.
Well, the problem is that it's clear that the press today, a lot of them, when they lean left, they have an agenda. And I think that's more of what the American people see. It's not a matter of pressing the president. I think all presidents, all politicians need to be pressed on issues. But when there's such an inconsistency to how they press Donald Trump versus Obama, I think that's the alarm that American people are seeing. And some of these stories, I'm sorry, Rob, are just pure fake news. Yeah. It's not backed up by facts, and the sources never want to go on record. I mean, some of this stuff just isn't proven, Rob. And so I think that's what the president is talking about, and I think a lot of the American people agree with him.
And it's a major topic because the First Amendment and our free press is the reason that we live in such a great country, that we don't have an oppressive regime ruling us, a corrupt regime. So the threat of taking away the media is certainly scary to everybody. So it's a topic that needs to be discussed,
That's also
guys.
A problem.
Thanks so much for coming on this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, now we're going to go over to Janice Dean. She is in the. We're going to go to Jillian, who's going to do this. Go ahead.
Hey, you know what? If I look like the lovely Janice Dean, then I am thrilled. Good morning, guys. Yeah, Janice, right now on the East Coast, it's feeling like fall, but out west, we're still dealing with major problems.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are still dealing with fire danger, extreme fire danger. We had explosive expansion of fires yesterday because of the winds. So red flag warnings for millions of folks, including in Northern California, Central California, and Southern California. We're now going to have those offshore winds returning. So the onshore winds actually get the moisture into this area, but offshore winds, we've got fast-moving winds that go through those valleys and canyons and heat things up, and therefore the potential for explosive fire danger for this region. Relative humidity is very low. So not only do we have the winds, we have the low relative humidity and no rainfall in the forecast. Past 6 hours, nothing. We do have some rain moving into the northwest, but not getting into the areas that we really need it. So for firefighters, I mean, their work is cut out for them. Prayers for them and the folks in Northern and Central California, where the fire danger is going to remain high over the next couple of days. Jillian and Rob, back to you.
All right, Janice, thank you.
Okay. It's not good news. All right, Janice, thank you. All right, coming up, he beheaded his own mother, and now this illegal immigrant is about to walk free. We're going to talk about that story coming up.
Plus, girls can join the Boy Scouts, a decades-old tradition now changing. Some people aren't so happy. Carly Shimkiss is here with a reaction. Girls in the Boy Scouts. That announcement sending shockwaves across the nation.
That's right. Carly Shimkiss with Fox News Headlines 24/7, Sirius XM 115. Here with some of the reaction to this, and a lot of people don't know what to make of this.
Yeah, and this is causing major controversy among the top brass in the scouting community. So the Boy Scouts say that they're allowing girls into their organization after years of requests from parents. But the one group that's not singing Kumbaya, the Girl Scouts. Here's a direct quote quote, "We've enjoyed a strong relationship and partnership with them over the years, and we're disappointed that the Boy Scouts of America didn't discuss this with us to say we're having problems with our membership. This is a direct response to boost their declining membership." But other people are calling this the latest crack at political correctness. Donald Trump Jr. took to Twitter saying, "Strange, I thought that's what the Girl Scouts were for." Another tweet by Matt says, "Boy Scouts competing with the NFL for the stupid award, and they can't even blame concussion." So the big question here, though, despite this change, the organization has no plans of changing their name.
I was going to ask
They will
that.
still be called the Boy Scouts. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I
Yeah.
wonder if at some point that'll change.
Yeah, I still wonder.
The Scouts, right? It's got to be the Scouts.
Who's right on the reason? The Girl Scouts with their reasoning that it's for money, or is the Boy Scouts really bending to the pressure of girls wanting to get in?
There's so much drama over
I
this.
know.
Now, this could be a reality show.
I want the why.
It could be.
Yeah.
All right, well, this next one is causing international outrage. So a Christian group was banned from attending an event for freshman students at Oxford University. Now, here's a statement from the event organizer. He says, "We recognize the wonderful advantages in having Christian Union representatives at the freshers or freshman fair, but they're concerned that there is potential for harm to freshers who are already struggling to feel welcome in Oxford." But this ban is not sitting well with a lot of people across the country and on social media. Peggy says, "So the answer is to alienate the Christian group, typical liberal establishment." And Martin says, "A disgrace. Why are the elite so keen to disregard Christian beliefs which have been the backbone of this country's culture for years?" Now, after outrage from the students who spoke out, they decided to have a multi-faith station with pamphlets representing various religions.
Okay, so gone are the days of the chief financial or chief communications officer?
Exactly. You know what? From England to Canada we go. The Toronto School Board has banned the word chief out of respect for Indigenous people. So like you said, the title of chief financial officer, chief academic officer will now be replaced with the word manager. This is Dr. Duke Redbird who made this change possible, but a lot of people are also saying, is this more political correctness? This person on Twitter just called it crazy. Mike also says, "Watch out, Toronto police and fire chiefs. You may be next."
Oh, geez.
These left-wing PC crusaders are contagious and likely to spin out of control. And you know what? I got to say, I really feel that the word chief is sort of a term of honor. It means that you've gone far in your career. But
why is that an
I don't
insult?
think it's really disrespectful. But according to others,
everything is an insult these days.
Considered disrespectful. Yeah.
All right.
PC world.
Carly
Grand.
Shimkus.
Carly, thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us. Coming up, President Trump calling out Democrats for pushing back on his tax plan.
Sadly, the Democrats have become obstructionists. They want to stop. They don't want to do anything productive. They want to raise your taxes very, very substantially.
But our next guest says it is music to his ears. He would know. He's a small business owner, and he was at that rally last night.
And it is now time to check in on what's coming up on Fox and Friends. And Todd Pyro is live in Pennsylvania following. Yeah, that's right. The president's big tax push yesterday, and a lot of excited people there, Todd.
Oh, yeah, Rob and Jillian. Good morning to both of you. Obviously, it's all about the Benjamins today here at the City Line Diner in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, right down the road from where the president was speaking last night. We're going to talk to the real folks, none of the elite in Washington and New York and L.A. We're going to talk to the real folks about tax reform, tax cuts. What do they think? And just to show you that this place is all about focusing on making a good dollar and saving a good dollar, this breakfast right here at the City Line Diner, 2 eggs, home fries and toast, $1.99. You can bet your boots that people are going to be stoked about saving a little bit of money on the President Trump tax plan. We'll have more on that when Fox and Friends kicks off at the top of the hour.